We'll finish with Kriya. And all pieces of the puzzle fall into place with Kapalabhati and Gajakarani. Chapter 2 of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Sutra 35. Then Kapalabhati is described. Perform Rechaka, efflux, and Puraka, influx, rapidly like the bellows of a blacksmith. This is called Kapalabhati and destroys phlegmatic diseases. This exercise is often done as a breathing exercise. But in line with what we have done so far, we're coming to a conclusion, preparing us for pranayama next week. Energy control through mind control. Now, in the translation, the translator made a mistake. The interpretation below the sutra says, by repeatedly letting Shiva out via Chandra Bindu and in through Surya Bindu, you create an increased circulation in the Ida channel, which causes the removal of knots, obstacles, hindrances, which cause diseases of the phlegm. What is faulty here is Shiva out through Chandra Bindu is not possible. Shiva goes out through Surya Bindu. So the translator mixed up Surya Bindu and Chandra Bindu. So you repeatedly let Shiva out via Surya Bindu and in through Chandra Bindu. And this is how it works. You let Shiva out according to the instructions, and then you let Shiva in. And you do this repetitively. Based on the previous Kriya exercises, you've become familiar with energy flow. You know about Shiva, Shakti, and the direction they flow. And this is basically how pranayama works. You let Shiva in, you let Shiva out, using the mind, imagination. Sutra 36, freed from corpulence, phlegmatic disorders, impurities, etc. The performance of the above 6 acts. By the performance of the above 6 acts, one should practice pranayama. Then success in yoga is achieved without strain. This sutra tells us that there are 6 acts. When Kriya was introduced also, there was mention of 6 acts. But let's have a look at Sutra 37 and then 38. Some teachers, Sutra 37, some teachers say that all impurities of the nadis are removed by pranayama alone. And other acts, the above mentioned 6, are not accepted by them. Well, I kind of explained at the introduction of Kriya that the purpose of Kriya is to help people connect with energy in their body. Because how can you control energy if you're not sure what it is and what it feels like? Chapter 2 of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika starts with pranayama, which we will read next week. We will read from Sutra 1. Well, we started with Sutra 21, which said, assuming that we have started pranayama, if pranayama doesn't work, you need to have a look at these Kriya exercises first. And that is where we have landed now. That is where we have ended up now. But if you take the Kriya exercises literally and perform them literally, especially Dauti, Vashti, and Neti are very harmful. So there are teachers who will reject those exercises based on the logic that, you know, if you harm yourself, you're violating the non-violence principle, so that cannot be part of yoga. But in a practical sense, they're very helpful for beginners who have no notion of energy yet to become familiar with the concept of pranayama, letting in and out of energy, and also the feeling of energy. And as an example, when we talked about Muladhara chakra, and when we introduced also the concept of energy, I said energy is everywhere. Everything is based on energy. We're just not aware of it. And if to understand that, just try to observe what you experience when you need to go to the toilet. There's a very clear example of how energy is involved in how we function. So there you can very clearly feel energy. And the same happens when you're thirsty, when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're happy. Everything is energy. It's just we've never learned to look at it in that way. So we need to understand it before we can actually control it. And Kriya is designed to do just that. But now Sutra 38. Suddenly, I don't know if that has been inserted later, when the book was already completed by somebody else. But just out of the blue, there's Sutra 38 that says, then Gajakarani is described. Yogins draw up the apana to the throat and vomit the substances that are in the stomach. This act, the gradual practice of which brings all the nadis under control, is called Gajakarani by those who know Hatha Yoga. Now, what is written between square brackets has been added later by other interpreters of the text. Sometimes it makes sense, but often it does not, because it takes the text literal. In this case, food and water, etc., doesn't make sense. Why? Gajakarani tells us to draw up apana prana. What is apana prana again? That is the energy, the active energy, Shakti, from Muladhara chakra. And it then tells us to draw up the apana to the throat and vomit the substances. Vomiting the substances is you are expelling Shakti through the top. So what we have here is the complete picture of pranayama. Shiva in, Shiva out, with Kapalabhati, and Gajakarani, Shakti in, Shakti out. This is just finger practice before we start with real pranayama next week. Real pranayama is like this, but with a structure of counting. And in between the inflow and the outflow, there is a prolonged moment of allowing the energy to settle and become sattvic. We will explain in detail next week. This is just experiment before we start with real pranayama. And in this light also, Gajakarani, the seventh Kriya that is not mentioned, makes total sense. Because Kriya originally ended with only Shiva in, Shiva out. Gajakarani helps us to practice Shakti in, Shakti out, and it makes total sense. What doesn't make sense is that in the original text, Gajakarani apparently was not part of the Kriya exercises. So it was limited only to Shiva. For some reason that I cannot put my finger on. So what we have here now is Kapalabhati. Start with Shiva out, according to the text. So first Shiva out, then Shiva in, and you repeat a couple of times. Then Gajakarani. And the remainder of the time, concentration on nada. Still 20 minutes. That's it. Questions?